Before I even start, let me ask you something real quick. Where are you watching this from right now? And what time is it there? Drop it in the comments. Trust me, it matters more than you think for this story. I didn't know things were wrong until I heard the knock. Not a bang, not someone panicking, just 3 slow, intentional taps, cutting through the storm like it wanted my attention. At first, I brushed it off. Mountain weather is wild like that. Wind slams ice into doors, metal contracts, buildings make noise. Happens all the time. But then it came again. Same rhythm, same calm confidence. Like whoever or whatever was out there knew I was listening. The wind outside screamed non-stop, shaking the windows so hard the whole hotel felt like it was breathing. The lights flickered once, real quick, like the place itself got nervous. That's when I knew this wasn't just bad weather anymore. And if I hadn't had a reason to be on that mountain pass that night, none of this would have happened. Asterisk, I wouldn't have chosen that road if I had literally any other option. Nobody casually decides to drive through a mountain pass at night, especially when winter's already biting hard. But I was on a deadline, the kind that doesn't really care about weather apps or common sense. A missed delivery, a favor owed. One of those situations where saying no would have caused bigger problems than pushing through. I kept telling myself it was just a few more hours, that I'd be fine once I crossed the pass. The forecast earlier in the day didn't look great, but it didn't look apocalyptic either. Just snow, some wind, typical mountain stuff. I'd driven worse. At least that's what I told myself while watching the elevation climb and the temperature drop. Mile by mile, the road got quieter. Fewer cars, fewer lights, just endless dark. Trees on both sides, standing there like they were watching me pass through something I wasn't supposed to. About halfway up, I noticed how isolated it really was. No towns, no gas stations, no real turnoffs, just long stretches of road carved straight through rock and snow. The kind of place where if something goes wrong, help isn't coming fast. I remember thinking how dumb it would be to get stuck out there, laughing it off, trying to shake the feeling crawling up my spine. By the time the wind picked up and the snow started coming down sideways, I was already committed. Turning back felt just as risky as pushing forward. And that's when the storm stopped feeling like background noise and started feeling personal. Like it had been waiting for me to get that far before showing its real face. Asterisk guy felt the first real gust hit just as the sun dipped behind the peaks. 1 second, it was just a chill in the air. The next, the wind was howling like a pack of wolves chasing me down the road. Snow started to slam against my windshield like someone was throwing handfuls of ice at the glass. It was like nature decided to flip a switch, turning from a calm winter night into a full-on whiteout. Visibility dropped fast. I couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. Every tree along the roadside looked like a shadowy giant looming closer with each passing second. The road that felt manageable just minutes ago now felt like a frozen trap. I slowed down, gripping the wheel tighter, eyes darting between the foggy headlights and the swirling snow. There's something about being caught in a storm like that. It messes with your head. The silence you expect, gone. Instead, all you hear is the wind screaming and the snow crunching under your tires. It feels like the storm has a pulse, like it's alive and watching, waiting to see what you'll do next. Radio crackled with static and broken snippets of weather warnings. But nothing about this felt routine. It was like the storm wasn't just weather, it was something else. Something that wanted to keep me here, stuck, off the grid. That's when I started looking for a way out, or at least a place to wait it out. Little did I know, the road ahead wasn't going to give me that choice. Asterisk, I remember grabbing my phone, hoping to check in, or at least get some kind of signal update. But nothing, no bars. Just that dreaded little spinning wheel, like the universe was just laughing at me. I fiddled with it, rebooted it, tried every trick I knew, still dead silence. Then I switched to the radio, thinking maybe I could catch a weather update or some local chatter. Instead, all I got was static. This crackling noise that cut in and out, like whispers trying to get through but never quite making it. It's weird how losing connection messes with your head. Suddenly, you're not just fighting the storm outside, but the feeling that you're utterly alone. Out there, on that mountain pass, without a single voice to cut through the white noise. No texts, no calls, no help. Just that buzzing static and the storm howling louder than ever. It's like being trapped inside a snow globe, cut off from the world. Spinning around, but stuck in place. And that's when the real panic started creeping in. Because once the phones and radios go dark, you realize you can't just drive out of this mess whenever you want. You're at the mercy of whatever's outside your windows, the wind, the snow, and maybe something else. That's when I spotted the road ahead, starting to get blocked off by abandoned cars and wrecks. The kind of scene that screams no way forward. So yeah, losing communication wasn't just an inconvenience. It was the first step into something way darker. Asterisk, by the time I rounded a sharp bend, it hit me cars were just ... everywhere. Abandoned. Some flipped, others crashed right into the ditch, their lights flickering weakly like they were gasping for help. The road was blocked, jammed with wrecks and stranded vehicles as far as I could see. No way forward. No way back either. The silence out there was heavy, almost suffocating, even with the storm screaming all around me. Nobody was moving. No horns. No shouts. Just that eerie stillness you only get when something's very, very wrong. It was like the whole place had just frozen in time, and I was stuck right in the middle of it. I remember clutching the steering wheel, thinking about turning around, but every option felt dead. The snow was piling up fast, and there wasn't a spot to pull over safely. Even if I wanted to backtrack, the slick roads and low visibility made it too risky. It was like the mountain itself had swallowed the road, swallowing every escape route. I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see headlights chasing me or something worse lurking behind. But there was nothing. Just the storm and the empty road, littered with broken cars and silence. The feeling of being trapped started to settle in deep. At that moment, I realized I was forced to find shelter. No way I was going to be stuck out here all night. That's when I spotted the lights of a hotel up ahead, barely visible through the snow and fog. It was the last shot I had. Asterisk, finally, through the thick wall of swirling snow and fog. I caught a glimpse of some lights faint, but steady cutting through the whiteout. At first, it felt like a damn miracle, like the universe was throwing me a bone after the hellish drive. It was a hotel, sitting there on the edge of the mountain pass like some forgotten refuge. A beacon of warmth and shelter, or so I hoped. But as I got closer, That warm feeling started to fade. The hotel looked off. Not just empty or closed down, but like it was holding its breath. The parking lot was packed with cars, but not a soul was moving. No headlights flickering, no people rushing inside like you'd expect during a storm. Just stillness. It was eerie, like the hotel was waiting for something or someone. I parked the truck and stared at the building, half expecting a door to creak open or someone to peek out, but nothing. The glow from the windows was too steady, almost unnatural against the storm's chaos. It felt like the hotel was alive, watching me as much as I was watching it. Something about the silence pressed down hard, louder than the wind outside. I shook my head, trying to push off the creeping feeling crawling up my spine. I told myself, it's just the storm playing tricks. Little did I know, the hotel wasn't just a shelter from the snow. It was the start of something far worse. Asterisk when I finally stepped inside the hotel. I was hit with this strange kind of quiet, not the cozy kind you expect from a refuge, but the kind that feels heavy, like the air itself is holding its breath. The front desk was stuffed, sure, but the person behind it barely looked up when I walked in. Their eyes flicked over me like I was some problem they didn't want to deal with. No welcome, no small talk. Just a curt nod and a key dropped on the counter like it was some kind of warning. I glanced around the lobby, and that's when I noticed the other guests. They weren't chatting, laughing, or even moving much. Most were huddled in corners or staring blankly at the walls, like they were waiting for something or running from it. No smiles, no warmth. Just an odd, hollow vibe that sent a chill straight through me. Despite the heater humming softly in the background, the staff moved about silently, avoiding eye contact, almost like they were scared to say too much, or maybe scared to say anything at all. It was the kind of place where everyone seemed trapped in their own quiet fear. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just a storm and the long night ahead making everyone tense. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. The hotel wasn't just a shelter from the cold. It felt more like a cage, a place where the storm wasn't the only thing we needed to worry about. So once I settled in, I started noticing things that just didn't sit right. The staff, they weren't outright rude, but there was this weird edge to how they moved and spoke. Like they were trying to keep it cool, but you could see the tension bubbling under the surface. Their eyes would dart around nervously, and they'd avoid looking me straight in the face, almost like they were afraid of what might happen if they did. You could tell they were on edge, like they were hiding something or just plain scared themselves. And the guests? Man, that was even weirder. They weren't your usual hotel crowd. No chatter, no friendly smiles, just a bunch of people staring off into nowhere or staring at their phones like they were waiting for something bad to happen. Eye contact, forget about it. Everyone seemed glued to their own little bubble, avoiding any connection, like some unspoken rule had been laid down about not interacting. It felt like walking into a room full of ghosts who weren't ready to speak yet. The whole vibe in the place was tense as hell. I kept telling myself it was just the storm making everyone jittery, but something told me it was more than that. The kind of feeling when you know you've walked into a situation that's been spinning out of control long before you got there. I was still hoping the hotel would be a safe spot somewhere to wait out the storm, but with every passing minute, it felt less like a refuge and more like a trap. Asterisk. The storm outside wasn't just getting worse, it was turning into something else entirely. The wind started howling like a beast right outside the windows, rattling the glass so hard it sounded like the whole building might come apart. You know that kind of noise? Like nature's screaming right in your ear, relentless and angry. Yeah. That. It wasn't just wind. It was this raw, wild force that felt alive, like it had a mind of its own. Every gust slammed against the hotel walls, making the old structure groan and creak like it was struggling to hold itself together. The lights flickered a few times, and every time they went dim, my heart skipped a beat. You start to realize you're not just fighting the cold and the snow anymore. You're fighting a storm that's got a personality, and it's pissed. Inside, people got quieter. The usual nervous energy from being snowed in turned into something heavier. Like the storm was bleeding through the walls, messing with the mood and making everyone on edge. I caught some guests peeking nervously at the windows, like hoping not to see something they already knew was out there. It's funny how a storm can mess with your head. When the wind screams that loud and the snow blinds you, it's easy to start imagining things. Shadows moving where they shouldn't, sounds that don't belong. The hotel didn't feel safe anymore. It felt like it was part of the storm. Like whatever was outside was trying to get in. I was still trying to wrap my head around the storm when someone, one of the hotel staff, I think, pulled me aside with this serious look that didn't mess around. Quiet, almost like they didn't want to get noticed, they said. Whatever you do, don't go outside. Not tonight. That's it. No explanation. Just that warning, heavy and loaded. I remember staring at them, half thinking they were messing with me, or maybe just spooked from the storm. But the way they said it, like it wasn't just about the weather, there was something more, something nobody was willing to say out loud. The kind of warning that sticks with you because it feels like a secret you shouldn't know, but can't forget. The other guests seemed to know the drill too. No one was stepping outside, and when someone asked why, the answers were vague: storm's not normal, or you don't want to see what's out there. No one pressed further, just nervous glances and hurried conversations that died when you looked their way. It wasn't like a normal snowstorm warning. It was the kind of quiet rule that feels carved in stone, unspoken but deadly serious. Like, stepping outside wasn't just dangerous, it was forbidden. The kind of rule that's there to keep you safe, sure, but also to keep something locked away. That night, those few words stuck with me. They weren't just talking about weather. They were talking about survival. The storm had been raging for hours when the noises started. At first, it was subtle, just a soft knock somewhere deep in the hotel, like someone tapping on a door or a window. I figured maybe it was just the wind, or some loose shutter banging against the side of the building. But then the knocks came. Again, slow and deliberate, like someone was standing out there, right outside the walls, waiting for me to hear. It wasn't just knocking. I heard footsteps echoing down the empty hallways, heavy, dragging steps that didn't match anyone I could see. The kind of sound that makes you stop what you're doing and hold your breath, hoping it's just your imagination. But it wasn't. Every time I convinced myself to ignore it, the sounds came back louder, closer. Like whatever was out there was getting bolder. Some of the other guests whispered about it quietly, trying not to freak anyone out. They said they heard dragging sounds, like something being pulled along the floor outside, or scratching noises near the windows. No one wanted to say it outright, but you could feel the fear thick in the air. Like whatever was outside didn't belong to this world, or at least not to the living. By that point, the hotel didn't feel like shelter anymore. It felt like a cage, and those noises were a reminder that whatever was out there wasn't just a storm, it was something waiting, watching, and maybe even coming closer. Asterisk, all right. So this is where things got real. One of the guests looked like he'd had enough of waiting around, decided to step outside, probably thinking he could brave the storm, or maybe just get some fresh air. I remember watching him through the frosted window, how he pulled his coat tighter, took a few steps into the blizzard, and then just vanished. No shout, no struggle, nothing. Just gone. At first, people thought he might have gone to the other side of the hotel or found a sheltered spot, but hours passed, and there was no sign of him. No footprints coming back, no banging on the door, nothing. It was like the storm swallowed him whole. That's when the panic really started to bubble up. Guests began whispering, looking at each other like they were scared to admit what they were thinking out loud. Something out there was dangerous, something nobody could fight or outrun. The staff got tipped and more nervous, refusing to say anything except to keep everyone inside. You could feel the fear pressing down on us, thick and heavy like the snow outside. Everyone was watching their backs, jumping at every noise, every shadow. The hotel that once felt like a refuge now felt like a trap where you could disappear just as easily as Flashy Sly. That guy did that. It was the moment when the story stopped being about a bad storm and started being about survival, about staying alive in a place where no one really wanted to be. Asterisk, after that guy disappeared, things inside the hotel got real messy, like the air itself was thick with tension and distrust. People started whispering, but instead of coming together, the guests and staff seemed to drift apart, each telling their own version of what was going down. The stories didn't line up. Some of the staff claimed it was just the storm playing tricks on everyone's mind, that the guy probably got lost in the blizzard and would turn up once it calmed down. Others hinted at darker things, talk about strange sightings, weird noises, even warnings passed down through the hotel's old records that nobody wanted to admit were real. It was like everyone was holding on to pieces of a puzzle, but refusing to show the whole picture. The guests weren't much better. Some said they'd seen shadows moving outside, like figures lurking just beyond the windows. Others swore they heard voices calling their names in the wind, even when no one else was around. Arguments broke out quietly, but the tension was clear. Nobody trusted what the others were saying, and paranoia started to creep in. That's when the hotel stopped feeling like a place to hide and started feeling like a pressure cooker ready to blow. Everyone was on edge, watching each other, waiting for the next thing to happen, but not sure what that would be. It was clear that whatever was going on wasn't just the storm or one missing git, was something bigger and way more twisted. Asterisk. After hours of that relentless storm pounding against the hotel, the power started acting up. First, it was little things, the lights flickering like a cheap horror movie. One moment steady, the next plunging into shadow for a second or two. At first, people just shrugged it off, blaming the storm's fury outside. But then the flickers turned into full-on blackouts that had the whole place plunging into eerie darkness. You don't realize how much you depend on light until it's gone, especially in a place like that. The silence that follows is almost deafening. You could hear the storm screaming outside even louder, because inside, There was nothing else, no hum of the lights, no buzzing of the electronics. Just darkness, cold, and the sound of your own heartbeat thumping in your ears. Then the generator kicked in with that low, grinding roar, bringing back just enough light to make the shadows on the walls dance. But it was a weak kind of light, flickering and uneven, like the hotel itself was barely hanging on. People started whispering about how the power failing was more than just bad luck. It felt like the storm was trying to cut us off, piece by piece, from any chance of help or escape. The staff scrambled, trying to keep things running. But you could see it in their eyes. They were scared too. The hotel, once a place we thought would keep us safe, was turning into a cage with flickering lights and looming shadows. That night, the failing power wasn't just about convenience, it was about survival and how quickly things could spiral into chaos when the lights go out. Then it all went pitch black. The weak flicker from the generator died out, and suddenly, the whole hotel was swallowed by a darkness so complete it felt like the shadows had waked. The emergency lights kicked on, but they were these tiny, sickly glows that barely cut through the gloom, casting long, twisted shadows that seemed to crawl along the walls. In that blackout, every sound got amplified: the creaks of the old building settling, the distant howl of the storm, and the soft, uncertain breaths of people trapped inside. People started whispering, some trying to calm others down, but the panic was simmering just beneath the surface. It was like everyone suddenly realized how vulnerable we were, stuck in this frozen fortress with no way out and no way to call for help. I remember the feeling of being trapped in a nightmare where you can't wake up, where the dark presses down on your chest and every noise could be the thing coming for you. Phones were useless. Radios were dead. The only light came from a few flickering candles some guests had pulled out. But the shadows they cast were worse than the darkness itself. People started grouping up, huddling close, like we were all trying to share whatever tiny bit of safety the others could give. Arguments flared, fear turned to frustration, and the hotel felt less like a shelter and more like a pressure cooker ready to explode. That blackout was the low point. The moment where survival wasn't just about the storm outside, it was about holding on to your sanity inside. When the blackout hit and the fear really started settling in, people's survival instincts kicked into overdrive. You could feel it in the air, like the calm before a storm inside the storm. Folks started clustering together, looking for some kind of safety in numbers, but at the same time, the tension between us was like a live wire, ready to snap. People whispered plans, traded nervous glances, and kept close tabs on one another. You could see it in their eyes, that mix of fear, desperation, and that basic human will to survive. Some tried to take charge, telling everyone to stay calm and stick together, while others just wanted to lash out, blaming anyone who made a wrong move. Arguments sparked over the smallest things: who should lead, where to find supplies, or who was acting weird. In a place like that, under so much stress, you see people's true colors come out. Some stepped up and became the quiet backbone holding others steady. Others got cold and distant, shutting down completely or acting irrational. Fear makes you do things you never thought you'd do, and trust becomes the rarest thing in the room. It wasn't just about the storm outside anymore. It was about the chaos building inside. Survival wasn't just staying warm or fed, it was about keeping your mind sharp and your nerves steady, even when everything screamed at you to lose it. That night, Every second felt stretched tight, like a wire about to snap. Asterisk while trying to make sense of the madness. I started poking around the hotel, looking for anything that might explain what we were dealing with. That's when I stumbled on things that made my skin crawl. Doors marked staff only or restricted that looked like they hadn't been opened in years. But the locks were fresh, like someone wanted to keep people out or in. Down one dimly lit hallway, I found old notices pinned to a bulletin board, yellowed with age but still legible. They weren't your usual hotel memos. Instead, they talked about past incidents, guests going missing, strange noises reported, even warnings about staying inside after dark. It was like the hotel had a dark history nobody talked about, something that was buried under layers of snow and silence. I also noticed subtle things, like certain hallways where the air felt colder, or where the walls seemed to hum faintly, like the building itself was alive with secrets. Some rooms were locked tight, no explanation, and when I asked, the staff would just avoid my questions or give me vague answers. It felt like the hotel was hiding more than just creaky floors and old plumbing. What hit me hardest was realizing this wasn't a one-time thing. Whatever was happening had been going on for years, maybe decades, and every winter, the storm would bring it all back to life. The hotel wasn't just a shelter from the storm, it was the center of it, the heart of some twisted nightmare that kept replaying itself. Asterisk, one of the worst moments came late into the night when, through the blur of snow and the flashing lightning outside, I swear I saw something moving. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the storm, a shadow cast by the flickering emergency lights, or maybe some loose tarp caught in the wind. But then the shape took form. Tall, slow, almost gliding through the snow like it didn't belong to this world. It wasn't human, not quite. It moved too smoothly, too deliberately, like it was watching us from the storm's chaos. I could barely make out any features, just this vague silhouette that disappeared whenever a gust of wind blew harder or the snow thickened. But the feeling it gave me was like cold fingers crawling down my spine. I wasn't the only one who saw it. A few other guests caught glimpses too, their faces pale and voices hushed as they shared what they saw. No one wanted to say the word out loud, but the panic was written all over their expressions. Something was out there, and it was getting closer. That shape outside shattered whatever hope I had that this was just a bad storm. It was a sign, a warning that whatever was trapping us inside wasn't just weather, it was something else. Something alive, patient, and maybe even hungry. From that moment on, the hotel didn't just feel haunted. It felt haunted, asterisk by this point. I was starting to piece together the hotel's unspoken rules, the one no one wanted to say out loud, but everyone knew was real. Nobody, under any circumstances, was allowed to step outside after dark. It wasn't just a safety thing from the storm. It was like some ancient law, passed down silently from one winter to the next, meant to keep something locked away. The staff kept dropping hints, half warnings, half pleaser about why you don't walk into the storm. They talked about the consequences, but never spelled it out. You could tell the fear wasn't just about the cold or the snow. It was about what waited out there if you crossed that line. And let me tell you, that kind of fear sinks deep into your bones. Guests who broke the rule, well, no one ever saw them come back. Those who tried to question it got shut down quick, with looks like they'd just asked about something best left forgotten. The whole place had this vibe, like the hotel itself was a prison, and the storm was its guard. It made me realize this wasn't just about surviving nature's fury, it was about surviving whatever nightmare was hiding beneath all that snow and wind. The rule was there to keep us alive, sure, but it also felt like it was there to keep something from getting out, and breaking it wasn't an option, because whatever waits outside, it's patient, and it doesn't forget. Asterisk. At this point, the tension inside the hotel had reached a breaking point. The storm showed no sign of letting up, and the missing guest was still nowhere to be found. We were stuck in this frozen nightmare, cut off from the world with no clear way out. And then came the moment when we had to make a choice that felt like being backed into a corner with no good options left. Some folks wanted to hunker down and wait it out, hoping that somehow the storm would break and the missing person would turn up safe. Others argued that waiting wasn't an option, that staying put meant we were just sitting ducks for whatever was lurking outside. The debate got heated, voices rising, panic seeping in with every word. Finally, the decision came down to this. Someone had to go outside and try to find help, or at least figure out what had happened to the missing guest. It was a desperate gamble. No one wanted to volunteer, but staying meant risking the whole group's safety. It was like choosing between jumping off a cliff or staying trapped in a burning building. The weight of that decision hit us all hard. Everyone knew the risks. Everyone felt the cold sweat of fear creeping down their backs. But survival sometimes means making the worst calls, even when your gut screams at you to run the other way. That night, whatever choice we made, there was no turning back. Asterisk then, out of nowhere, the storm just stopped. One moment the wind was howling like a beast trapped in a cage, tearing at the walls and rattling the windows, and the next, it was dead silent, like someone had flipped a switch and cut all the noise. The snow stopped falling, the gusts faded away, and the whole world outside seemed to hold its breath. That silence was worse than the storm itself. It felt unnatural, heavy, like the calm before some even bigger storm nobody wanted to face. People started peeking out the windows, blinking against the bright sunlight that reflected off the freshly cleared snow. The world outside looked peaceful, almost like nothing had happened. But deep down, nobody was buying it. The authorities showed up not long after finally. Rescue teams, emergency vehicles, people ready to bring us out of that frozen nightmare. But the relief was mixed with unease. Some guests never came back, and the hotel's secrets still hung in the air like a bad smell no one wanted to admit. Even with the storm gone, there was this lingering feeling that something wasn't right. Like the nightmare hadn't ended, it just paused. Like whatever had been watching us from the shadows was still out there, waiting for the next time the snow starts falling again. Asterisk, when morning finally broke, the world looked like it had been scrubbed cleanly, snow packed down and glistening under a cold, clear sky. Rescue crews rolled in, their vehicles crunching over the icy roads that were finally passable. At first it felt like a miracle we were going to get out, put this whole nightmare behind us. But even with the sun shining and the storm gone, there was this heavy weight hanging over everything. The authorities moved through the hotel, taking notes, asking questions, but their faces told a story they wouldn't share. Some guests were missing, just gone, without a trace, and no one had answers. It was like the whole place was shrouded in a secret that no one outside was allowed to know. People tried to piece it together, but the official story was thin mostly. About the weather, the storm, and unexpected complications. Nothing about the strange noises, the eerie silence, or the shadowy figures anyone had seen. It was almost like a collective hush fell over the whole event, like admitting the truth was worse than keeping quiet. I remember looking around at the survivors, their eyes still haunted, the fear not quite gone. We'd been through hell, but some part of that nightmare stayed with us, like a shadow that wouldn't lift. Even now, thinking back, I realized that the morning after wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of questions with no answers, and the kind of dread that doesn't fade when the sun comes up. Asterisk, even after the storm passed and the sun was shining again, there were things that nobody could explain, and I don't mean the weather. Some people just vanished, plain and simple. No traces, no clues, no goodbyes. Families were left with empty seats and unanswered questions, and the official reports, well, they stuck to the basics, chalking it up to the storm's chaos or unfortunate accidents. But we all knew that was a cover-up, a way to keep the darker truths buried under snow and silence. What really sent chills down my spine was how the hotel itself seemed to hold on to its secrets tight. The staff acted like nothing had happened, or like they were sworn to forget. Guests who stuck around were tight-lipped, eyes darting nervously whenever anyone brought up the missing folks or the strange noises. It was as if acknowledging the truth would somehow make it real or worse, invite it back. I realized that some mysteries don't get solved. They just sit there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the next storm to roll in. The mountain pass. Hotel wasn't just a place to wait out a blizzard, it was a place where the line between reality and nightmare blurred. And some of those nightmares never left. So if you ever find yourself stranded in a place like that, remember, sometimes the scariest thing isn't what you see or hear, it's what's left unsaid. The things that slip through the cracks when the lights go out. Asterisk, even now, thinking back on that night, there's this chill that won't go away, the kind of feeling that sneaks up on you when everything seems calm, but you know it's just the quiet before the storm. The hotel sits there, all peaceful and silent on the mountain pass, but deep down, you know something still watches from the shadows. Something that didn't leave when the snow melted or when the rescue crews showed up. It's like the air around that place holds a secret, a warning that the nightmare isn't over. No matter how far I've gotten from that frozen hell, I can still feeleth lurking a presence that doesn't sleep, that waits for the next storm to bring it back to life. The missing people, the strange noises, the rules no one dared to break. They weren't just random scares. They were signs, pieces of a puzzle too dark to solve. And here's the kicker: sometimes, when you're alone late at night, you might catch a glimpse of that same shadow moving just beyond your vision. You might hear a knock when there shouldn't be anyone there. And maybe, just maybe, you'll understand what I mean when I say some places don't let go. They hold on to you. They watch. They wait. So yeah, if you ever find yourself stuck somewhere like that, remember, the mountains aren't just watching, they're waiting. And sometimes that's the scariest thing of all. And that's the story. Thanks for sticking with me. Don't forget to hit that like button. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. It always freaks me out how many different places we all tune in from. Until next time, stay safe out there and keep your eyes open.